Hello, and welcome back to another episode of General Conference Conversations, the podcast where we have conversations about General Conference. I'm your host, Kaylin, and I am back. It has been a minute, but I'm here, and I am gonna try my best to get these last few talks done before conference next week. Well, I guess 2 weeks from today, so I've got a bit of time. We only have 5 talks left, so I can do it. We can do it. We can get there. But today we're talking about Elder Cordón's talk, Divine Parenting Lessons. And I really struggled, honestly, to figure out how to talk about this talk. I know I've said this a million times, but I really want to and try to address these talks and talk about these talks in a way that's helpful for anybody listening to this podcast. Which is not always feasible, right? Some talks are very, very specific. We had that just this conference to talk about senior missionary couples. That's a very specific group of people that he's talking about, right? And even if someday, 20 years in the future, you decide to go on a senior couple mission or a senior sister mission, like that's not where you're at now, I guess. And so you're not usually making that decision or those plans in your 20s or 30s. But anyway, this is not as specific because it's about parents, and there's a lot of parents in the world. But still, I don't have kids, and I'm sure many of my listeners don't have kids. And so I really struggled to try and figure out how to talk about this in a way that, everyone would get something out of it, basically. And so it took me a couple of tries to read through it, and kept getting distracted and being like, this isn't for me, I'm not the target audience for this, right? Which is totally fine. Sometimes the general conference talk is not for you. But in trying to figure out something that really spoke to me, it's about the third time I went through it, I was like, oh, that's what it is. So we're gonna get to that. And hopefully we can all get something out of this. And I don't say that to say you should read until you find something that you get out of a general conference talk. Sometimes it's just not gonna happen, or sometimes you'll read this talk 10 years from now and you'll get something out of it, right? But I do really believe that there's something for everyone in general conference, and there could be something for everyone in every talk. So anyway, he is talking about parenting, obviously, right? And of course, before I talk about this, I really encourage you to listen to it, or read it, or watch it on your own time. Maybe you'll have something that sticks out to you as well, to get your own inspiration and direction and stuff like that. It's really important. But I'm gonna jump right in, obviously. So we're talking about parenting, and how parenting is one of life's most extraordinary experiences. Again, I don't have kids, and so I don't have this kind of experience, so I'm gonna just say that up front. But he's talking about having a partnership with God in parenting your children. That's kind of his whole shebang, is about we need to partner with God through covenants and through prayer and through personal revelation, and through the gospel to better parent our kids. And I'm going to read this quote really quick. She says, "We must climb to the higher ground of gospel culture with our families. President Russell M. Nelson declared, 'Families deserve guidance from heaven. Parents cannot counsel children adequately from personal experience, fear, or sympathy.'" And this is kind of also part of the reason it was kind of harder for me to read this talk is I'm not a parent. I wanted to have this kind of resonate for the most people possible. And this kind of whole section about climbing to the higher ground of gospel culture, it sounds kind of, I don't want to say prideful, but that's kind of how it felt to me reading the first time. I was like, wow, this sounds really like, we're absolutely definitely better parents because we're members of the church. Or the only way you can be a good parent is to be a member of the church, right? Or to have the gospel, or to be Christian, or however you want to take that, right? And it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, I guess. And I don't think that's what he's trying to say here, right? But he's trying to encourage us to use the tools that we do have as members of the church, the connection that we do have with God, the promises that we do have through our covenants, to better parent our children and to have the extra help that we have, right? But I did just want to point that out, and I've pointed this out in other talks, especially in this one specific general conference, that often people use something like a talk like this, or something in general conference as kind of reasoning and explaining away of judgment or of pride, right? It's easy to say, well, I'm a better parent than that person because my husband and I were sealed in the temple, or I'm a better parent than that person because I'm endowed, or I'm a better parent than that person because we have FHE every week. And this isn't just like members versus non-members either, right? It could also be within the church of, I'm a better parent than that family sitting in that pew because all of our kids are here, or I know for a fact that they don't do FHE every week, or I know for a fact that they haven't kept up with their Come Follow Me, or their kid doesn't go to seminary, or their son didn't go on a mission, right? Like, it can be really easy to look at these like visual things that we can see about other people's lives. And I have said this probably a million times, especially this last season, but it's easy to look at the people around us in church or outside of church, just in the world in general, and see all the ways that they're failing and think that we're better than them. And it goes the other way as well. We can look around and see, oh, I am a terrible parent because, this family over here is perfectly, beautifully dressed early to church every Sunday, right? We look at those outward indicators of quote-unquote faithfulness or quote-unquote worthiness, and we don't know what's going on the inside. Not to say that those people who show up pristine 5 minutes or 15 minutes early to church aren't worthy, but we all are making mistakes. Like, right, nobody's perfect. And so comparison, what they say, comparison's the thief of joy, right? When you compare, either you're being prideful or you're being self-deprecating. and there's a way that it can go too far, right? You can look up to someone and think, wow, they're doing a really great job, I'd love to be like them. And it's kind of the intention behind it, right? It's kind of I don't know how to say this. It's the lengths that you go to, I guess. And it's really easy to compare ourselves. And so I think, especially this quote, right? We must climb to the higher ground of gospel culture. And parents cannot counsel children adequately from personal experience, fear, or sympathy. And when you look at other parents who are parenting their children that way, or the way that you perceive them to be parenting, right? It can be really easy to think, man, they're a terrible parent, or their kid's just not getting enough to go off of, or they're going to turn out weird or wrong or whatever because they don't have the gospel, or because they're not, they must be doing something wrong as a parent because this thing happened or this thing didn't happen. And I think just to like put that out there at the start is also part of this, like the third reason this talk was really hard for me to try and figure out how I wanted to say this, right? I'm not saying that people are going to take this and use it to judge absolutely 100%, right? I don't know that. But as I pointed out in other episodes, it can be easy to use something, especially when it comes out of general conference, right? We take it very seriously when it comes out of general conference. It can be really easy to point to this quote and be like, well, but Elder Cordón said, like, you know, all this stuff. Or even just to rationalize it to ourselves in our heads. So to put that out there and have that out there, but I think truly he's really just saying, you know, we have access to God, and we have access to the power of the priesthood, and we have access to a ward family and ministering and all of these things, right, that can help us to be better parents and to help bring our kids up to be kind, loving individuals who love Jesus. That's really, honestly, I'll read a quote a little bit later at the very end that it really drives that home. I really think he's just, he's trying to get us to use the tools that are at our disposal, right? And he says that, he says that right away, right after that quote. You know, these are the things we have access to, values and practices and living in a higher and holier way, like expectations and culture and things like that. We have these teachings that help us to be better parents. And so he has a couple of three ways to his whole thing is establishing a gospel culture in our homes, and that the home is the center of gospel learning, right? So those three things are teach freely, model discipleship, and invite to act. So teaching freely is basically just like in every situation that you can kind of bring the gospel into it, right? And also, like this one he has is just like spend meaningful time with our children. Like that's amazing, right? And that's something that I think is a really big theme in this talk, and what really stuck out to me is I was, like I said earlier, I was reading through it for like the third or fourth time, being like, oh, intention. We're being intentional with our time with our kids, with our time with our spouse, with our time with our friends. And I think it can be really easy to, oh yeah, I hung out with my kids today, and it ends up being, but did you really, right? And I'm not saying that to judge. That came out sounding very harsh, but like, the only thing I can come up with just sounds like I don't. This is my only example, and I can't think of anything else. Watching a movie with your kids, absolutely, definitely, 100%. This was some of my favorite bonding moments with my family. Right, but then usually afterwards we like talked about it, or we talked during the movie, or you know, it was something that we all wanted to watch, right? We like made a very intentional choice to sit down and watch a movie as a family. And I think that's different than just being like, oh, here, we're watching a movie, if you want to come you can, and then everybody just kind of sits around and then just like leaves and goes to bed afterwards. And that happens sometimes. I'm not saying it isn't and it doesn't, and that we have to be like 100% on our toes all the time and like zoned in on making the best decision for every single possible moment of our kids' lives, right? We're not going to be perfect. And again, I'm not a parent, so like take what I just say with a grain of salt, but I do know even now when I'm having like when my husband and I sit down and have an intentional movie night together, right? Or like last night, we're obviously living together, but we're also living with some of our coworkers. We're on a job site out of state, like we're out of town, and so we're all living together in the company rental house. And last night we sat down, intentionally watched a hockey game together, and like ordered pizza, made popcorn, and like would we have had as much fun if it was just like, oh hey, we're gonna watch the movie or watch the hockey game, you can watch if you want to, and we just kind of like did our own thing and watched the hockey game together? We definitely still would have had fun, but did it make it a little bit more special because like we intentionally planned, okay, at 7 o'clock we're gonna watch the hockey game, and we're gonna order pizza, and we're gonna have soda, and we're gonna have popcorn, right? Like it doesn't have to be 100% of the time you're intentional about the time that you spend with your family or your friends or whatever, right? Sometimes it is just lazily like sitting on the couch not doing anything, but to try and take the time when you can, when you think about it, to make it intentional and to like not just watch the movie and go away, but like have conversations and maybe related to the gospel or not related to the gospel or related to things that happen in your life, right? But that intention is really important. And so that's kind of my question is, how can you be more intentional in the way that you interact with people around you? Of course, for parents, this is like about parenting, and so like how can you be more intentional about spending time with your kids? Like my parents would take us on dates, so it would just be one-on-one time, me, my mom, or me and my dad, right? We'd go often. So there are two things, sorry this is a tangent, but it just makes me giggle. When Borders was still a thing, we would go to Borders. I love books, so we'd go to Borders and we'd go to Seattle's Best Coffee that was in Borders. We'd get their like deluxe hot chocolate. So it was hot chocolate in a cup with whipped cream on top, like a bunch of whipped cream, and then like chocolate bars stuck into the top. Best night of my life. And then we'd go and look at books for like an hour. Now we go home. And then after Borders closed, or as an alternate, we'd go to Starbucks and we would get steamers, which is steamed milk with flavoring in it, which I still get to this day because they are amazing. We'd go and get steamers, and then they had the cranium card game with the clear plastic playing cards they'd have out at Starbucks. I don't know if they do that anymore, but we'd play the cranium card game together. Anyway, but that was like, I have really great memories with my parents. I don't remember what we talked about. I don't have any clue, but I know that they took the time out of their day to take just me, and the other parent took time out of their day to like take care of the rest of my siblings while I had a one-on-one time with my mom or a one-on-one time with my dad. And so there's that, but also just if you're not a parent or even if you are, but like the other people in your life, right? Friends, coworkers, family members, how can you spend intentional time with them and take time out of your day to call and really pay attention and have something to talk about, or go out to lunch and put your phone away, or invite people over for dinner and make a really nice dinner, right? Like, how can you do that? How can you do that in your life to be just more intentional about the way that you're interacting with other people? I really liked the very end here. He's kind of wrapping up his whole talk, and he says, as we partner with God through covenants and become his agents in the care of our children, he will sanctify our intentions, inspire our teachings, and temper our invitations so our children may know to what source they may look for remission of their sins. And I think, that's the whole point, right? That's the whole point of this talk. And you can also substitute, right, like become his agents in the care of his children as well, right? We are tasked with caring for each other. Not only are we tasked even more so with the care of our own children, but with the care of those around us. You know, God trusts us to take care of his spirit children that he sends to earth, that he can't be here to take care of physically. And so when we're intentional with that, miracles happen and amazing things happen. So that's my question. That's my thoughts on this, right? How can we be more intentional with the people around us, in interactions that we have, whether gospel related or not gospel related? But, you know, how are we intentionally caring for God's children? So, and as always, check out the footnotes if you want to. He has a lot of quotes. He has a lot of quotes in the talk. He also has a lot of quotes and other talks referenced in these footnotes. So many. So definitely take a look at those if you want to kind of study more about this particular topic and see what else he was thinking about. So yeah, he's got some really great quotes in here. Anyway, I like looking through them. They're like so good. So that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening or watching. As always, I'm on Instagram and Facebook at General Conference Conversations, and of course you can find me at YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and I love to hear from you. So messages and emails, comments, reviews, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So I will talk to you all next time.